Welcome to Wheels, Deals, and Meals, where we talk all things good food, good business, and good cars. And now, here is your host, Arnold Gassita, founder and CEO of Petra Automotive Products. Let's roll.
So your wife is pregnant, you have a daughter, you quit your job, and you called Dale.
Yeah. And I said, Dale, I got the most exciting news. I'm going to go ahead and be a coach and a trainer, and I want to come down and share with you what I've got. And so he said, great. He invited me down after I did the presentation, which was probably hurried, probably in 15, 20 minutes. He basically said, I'm going to pass. He didn't say, hey, could you give me a discount? He didn't say, I'll give you a shot. He just, I'm going to pass. He said, but I'm going to do you a favor.
You're my friend. I'll do it for you. No, none of that.
I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to introduce you to a guy that you really need to know. I said, great. It's this guy named John Palumbi. And so I called this guy up, John. I said, Dale referred you to me. He says, great. Yeah, let's have lunch. So I thought, okay, this is going to open up some big doors. Well, I sit down with John for lunch, and the first thing he says to me is, he says, hey, David, nice to meet you. He says, first thing I got to let you know, you've made a big mistake. Okay, and you're thinking, okay, I just left a job making, 12 grand a month, which was, think about that, in 1986, right? 86. So that was tall cotton, especially for somebody my age. I was all of 26, dripping wet. And so he tells me that. I said, what are you talking about? He says, hey, I've been doing this for over 20 years. It's a hard life. It's a hard job, blah, blah, blah. Well, I sat there, and the more he spoke, Arnold, the more I thought, okay, I think you're threatened. I think you don't want competition. I think you're telling me not because for my own benefit. You don't know me. I think you're telling me because somehow you don't want the pie to get sliced. So it just increased my resolve, and I'm very much that way. If somebody says you can't, yeah, I'm going to. So I left that meeting with greater resolve. The cool thing about the story is that I followed up. I stayed on Dale, and about 3 weeks later, he hired me, and he paid me the $3,000 a month. And so that's kind of how I started there, and I spent the next 2 years building a training clientele, coaching clientele, and also I had the first piece of software I ever had, which was one of the earliest pieces of software in our business, called the Win System. It was the first CRM system. So next thing you know, I'm 2 years in. I went from making 145 to nothing. I got that business within 2 years up over 200,000. And I'm starting to travel around the country. I was on something called ASTN, Automotive Satellite Television Network, with a guy named Grant Cardone, people may know. Zig Ziglar would be on there, Tom Stuker. And so I got introduced to a lot of those folks. I've known Grant for 30-something years. And so that was the start. And then all of a sudden, one of my clients happened to be a Mercedes store in San Jose, Smythe European. And the son of the owner, son of the patriarch, Michael, a great guy, is who I worked with. He was the GM at the time. And back when this is when we had pagers. Mm-hmm. And he kept wanting me to come to work for him. I said, Michael, I do my own thing. I have my own schedule, and I make good money, right? I'm good. So I get a page one day, and it says 983 5200, 408-983-5200, the phone number, 911-911-911. So I picked up the phone, I called him, he says, you have to come in. We need to talk. Okay. So I didn't know what. You're going to fire me as your consultant or coach or whatever. They had the Win System in there. They were also a software client. He says, David, this is what's happening. He introduced me to a plan that I'm not going to go over, but he had this 10-year plan. And he says, I need you to come in. And by then, I was spending too much time on the road. I had a son now, as well as a daughter. And it was just the right time. So imagine this. I went from 145 grand a year to zero to over 200. And then what did he offer me? 143 grand a year, right? So people think I'm nuts because I made money, I went backwards, made more, went down, And so I ended up there, but within a couple of years, that more than doubled. We were able to grow the dealership, increase sales massively. Had a tremendous team, and it gave me the opportunity to go from being a sales manager to a GSM. And then what happened is that led to me becoming the general manager and president of the store. Bill wanted to sell the store at the time because we had very favorable back then estate taxes, and we had very bad estate taxes. So if he sold the store, the capital gains was less money than the estate. He had 6 kids. All he cared about was taking care of those kids, and really, really tremendous family. And so I ended up, as the president and the dealer there, and we ended up selling to AutoNation. And then I was at AutoNation my 3rd month in.
So let me go back a little bit, because I think we're skipping some very important points that I know and I think are important. You're at this dealership. You're the general manager. Are you a partner at this point, or just general manager? General manager. You had what percentage of loyalty from your employees? What percentage would quit on you? None.
I actually did a LinkedIn post, Arnold, maybe about a year and a half ago. I actually went 20 years without losing an employee in a business that had 89% turnover. But if you looked at our year over year on balance, our turnover annually was under 3%. In an industry at that time was 89%.
But I think in any industry, not just automotive obviously is high, the dealership world is high, but in any industry, a 3% turnover is
astonishing.
People will be talking about it, raving about it. Unbelievable culture.
It's astonishing, and I owe that really to a couple of things. Number one was the Smythe family. That wasn't lip service. It wasn't a mission statement, an empty mission statement. It wasn't just a narrative. It was just, that was the culture. So we really believed to take care of people. The thing that was interesting is, we're the most profitable dealership. We created the most profitable store in the United States and didn't have the highest paid manager in any position. But nobody would leave because the culture, the way that people were treated with dignity and respect, the way everybody had a voice, the way everybody got to be a co-architect of this store. We grew our management team up to a total of 21 incredibly talented people. Really my role was to knock down obstacles and get out of the way and let them do their thing. And one of the things Bill Smythe taught
Which is
me,
a great culture,
and Michael always supported, is don't hire people and tell them how to do their job. Let them do their job. And I find even today, there's a lot of people that hire somebody to do a job and then spend all their time telling them how to do their job.
I know.
And that's really an indictment that you've hired the wrong person, or frankly, you're not allowing them to do what they do best.
That's right.
And so this was yet another time, it's interesting. You grow up and you have a hard start, a hard life, but I was blessed with the greatest mom in the world. I was blessed with somebody telling me to join the military. I was blessed with meeting a chaplain when I was in nuclear power school in Orlando that really helped me at a critical time in my life, directionally. I was blessed with an older sister that when I was going off the rails, she really took me under her wing and made sure that certain things happened so that I stayed on course. I was blessed with, great siblings that no matter what turmoil we went through, we never separated. We were always like this. And then time and time again, it seemed like I was blessed meeting somebody and by the grace of God having the wisdom to just listen to them and say, and I've told people this, when you go interview for a job, make sure that the company's not the only one involved in the interview. You have to interview them too, because I think one of the biggest mistakes some people make is they just take a job instead of the job. And the job doesn't necessarily mean the most
that's
money.
a great point, because you're joining that culture, right? they're not necessarily joining your culture. You're joining the company's culture. So you should ask
Wasn't my
questions.
culture. My job was just to protect it, to grow it, to nurture it. My job was to make sure that we as a team never, ever, ever, and this is another big deal, you never let anybody in the organization, they be the greatest salesperson, greatest technician, greatest manager, be able to do all these great things. But if they in any way, shape, or form are going to diminish your culture, or bring a toxic environment, you don't bring them on. Our job is like gatekeepers, is to protect that culture once you've built it. And that's really, this team of managers that was there was magical. Brian Nelson, John Seidler, Kelly Cornder, Peter Vanderhoof, Michael Familetti was there at one point. We had just spectacular human beings who had a common vision and a focus that wanted to deliver the most exceptional experience, not just to our clients, but for each other, and it was just incredible. And so one of the things that was really astounding to me is when we sold to AutoNation, I thought for sure, here you buy the most profitable dealership in the United States. And not just the most profitable, lowest turnover.
Can we talk about the number or we can't?
Yeah.
So what was the most profitable dealership in the United States doing?
Well, the average store, let's start here. The average store in the United States, if you look it up, was doing less than $1 million a year in net. A top 25% store would be doing over $1 million. If you were a top 25% Mercedes store, you might be doing $2 million. Okay, we were doing $25 million.
A year.
The last year I was there, we did over $29 million. We averaged over $2 million a month. We averaged twice as much a month as the average dealer did per year.
Unbelievable.
And we outgrew the Mercedes national numbers, Mercedes regional numbers, by anywhere from 35 to 60%. And what a lot of people don't realize is, I went to go see this incredible guy named Jay Abraham, who's considered by many to be the greatest marketing guru of all time. He was Tony Robbins. To this day is still Tony Robbins guy, Stephen M. Covey, and God knows everybody else. But I went to see him, spent $30,000 for a weekend seminar, which I thought was bananas, but it was the best thing I ever did, because I came back and one of the things I did is sat down with our folks and said, we're going to eliminate advertising. And people thought I was nuts. You imagine a car dealer with no advertising.
Yeah, especially back then.
Yes. So we cut the advertising. We created something called Seeds, My European Empowerment Drive, which we instead gave the ad dollars to. Our area of influence was 9 zip codes. We picked a nonprofit in each of those 9 zip codes. They were selected not by me, not by the managers, but by the associates who formed a committee, sat down, interviewed every one of these nonprofits. They selected the 9.
They were part of the decision making.
They were co-architects. And what happened is, here we are, we eliminate advertising, the store grows massively, the fixed operations department grows from 30 techs to over 100, over 2.3, 2.4 million a month in fixed gross, unheard of to this day. Find a store that does that. So under 3% turnover, top 5 in F&I, top 5 in CPO, number 5 in Mercedes, number 1 or 2 in Volvo, and absolutely the single best culture, the single greatest, no offense, group of people you could ever imagine coming together, many of which still communicate or connect to this day. And it was just a really magical time. So we get acquired, and I thought the first thing was going to happen is that somebody would sit down and go, okay, you've got to explain. We've got a bunch of other stores in the country. You've got to tell us, how'd you do this? But that's not what happened. What happened instead is the very first meeting was, okay, listen, I know you get a special store. Bill Smythe's great, Michael's great, and you've done some incredible things, but there are no hall passes or no sacred cows in AutoNation. So you're going to do the same things every other store does. Okay. So, well, long
the other
story.
stores aren't making 23 million, so you need to do the same thing the other stores are doing.
And guess what?
It makes no sense, right?
If you look at the numbers, that store went from making 1.3 to 3.1 to 5.6 to 8.1, 12.8, 16.7, 24.7, 29 million. And then 4 or 5 years later, after acquisition, it's back to making under 10 again. It started acting like other stores. And, one of the other real key lessons that I learned in that store is, you don't want to do what other people are doing. Whatever everybody else is doing, if they're going this way, run that way. I just think that it's important
I was
that
involved
you don't do what everybody
I was
else is
involved
doing.
prior to opening Petra, and I think you know the story with a very large company. And it always amazed me how they would pay so much money to acquire a successful business and then come tell you how not to make it successful and follow these other guidelines to change what they wanted and purchased,
Sure.
which is what happened with AutoNation. I remember when AutoNation first came out, not to dig on them, but dealerships still today, I think, is a very community type business. When they first came around, what did they do? Change the names, right? Then they realized, well, we can't change the name. We should keep the name of the people that were buying because it's community. It's local. Everything is local.
Yeah, it's amazing how many AutoNation stores, their market share diminished, and a lot of those AutoNation stores, we had a difficult time competing for market share against the mom and pops who were able to be far more agile, responsive, and they kept their direct ties to the community. When we were acquired, we lost that community connection because it wasn't part of the plan. And make no mistake, AutoNation did an awful lot of things right. Mike Jackson's a brilliant guy. Mike Maroney is a brilliant guy. And they were great leaders that flat knew this business. But it's difficult to run a dealership from 3,500 miles away. It's difficult to cookie cutter, and it's very difficult to try to create something to where you're trying to protect yourself from catastrophe, some knucklehead making a bad decision. But by doing that, you're constricting the entrepreneurs, the go-getters, the movers and shakers, and the top performers. And so, we ended up losing a lot of those top performers over time, and it was just not easy to keep them because
it changed.
it just
The
changed.
culture
Everything
The
changed.
culture changed. Everything changed. How long did you stay with them?
8 years, and I consider it. I consider it an MBA. It was my MBA in the car business. Because I think that we learned a lot and we did a lot of good things, but there were things that I learned in those 8 years that are without a doubt things that I would not have known. And I definitely got better. I got stronger. I got smarter. I got wiser. One of the things that was really important is, I think in any walk of life, I think oftentimes we humans make the grave error of not being able to disassociate the message from the person, or the message or the accomplishment from the company, right? So let's say that you're a Democrat, and you say, oh, Trump's an absolute piece of garbage, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that does not diminish in any way that guy flat knows how to make a deal. Period. Get over yourself. He knows how to make a deal. It doesn't diminish the fact that he understands how to do things to drive the economy, or he's going to look at things differently. Is it foreign to some people? Yeah. Is it uncomfortable to others? Sure. Does he do everything right? No. Is he a bit of a numbskull when it comes to social, Twitter, and absolutely. But same thing on the Republican side. You can't say just because you're a staunch Republican that there's not people on the other side of the aisle that have worthwhile things to offer. You got to be able to separate those two. So I think that we make the mistake, just like you were talking about in the big company you worked for. Why do we feel the need to change things in a way that makes us comfortable? Why is it that we believed, perhaps through
Especially
growing
when
up,
it's working.
why
That's what always boggled me.
when did the terms normal, average, and comfortable get glorified.
Right, become successful.
Who wants to be average? I don't want to be average. The great Jackie B. Cooper out of Oklahoma told me one time to my face, he said, David, he says, apologize for the accent. This is why I'm not a successful actor. He said, David, he says, you know what average is? I said, no, Jackie, what is it? He said, well, when you're average, David, that means you're the best of the worst and the worst of the best. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty shitty. You don't want to put that on a resume or a business card or a billboard.
I'm average.
Right?
Hire me because I'm your average Joe.
The guy just nailed for me how much I don't want to be average. Okay, I also don't want to be normal. Right. I don't want to subscribe to everybody's ideals. And my belief is, listen, if you could show me that your dealership is at least at the top of the market, if not the top of the region, top of the nation, okay, I'm here to tell you, if you are, there's more there. You're still not there. There's more there. You're leaving money on the table. But if you're not, please explain to me why you think, and you're willing to stand on the mat saying, no, what we're doing is the right thing to do. Unless you're also telling me you set out to be suboptimal, substandard, or just average, right? I mean, if you're at NADH, left side of the page, right side of the page, who said they want to be just right or left of the crease? If it's NADH, top of the page, bottom of the page, hey, we're in the middle. Okay, we're good. We're in the middle, right? I don't get that, Arnold. I think that I seek I seek discomfort.
You know, in our company, we say that we strive for perfection. We had an employee one time tell me, well, you know, we're not perfect. I said, yeah, no, we're striving for perfection. I get it. We're not perfect. We're striving. I go, because what are you going to strive for? To be normal?
Yeah.
You're going to strive to make mistakes? Because we all make mistakes, because we're just, no. We're going to strive to be the best.
Yeah, you want to be, geez, I'd rather be 90% of awesome than 100% of average.
Right.
What do you do with that?
Right.
Yeah.
So did you leave AutoNation and then that's when you started kind of going back into your own business?
Yeah. So when I left AutoNation in January of 2008, myself and my buddy Frank Sheets, who is also a Mercedes operator, I had been a data junkie for years, and I started creating all of these analytics and reports by hand before Excel, Lotus 1, 2, 3, and there was a number of things that helped propel us at our dealership, and one of them was we invested a tremendous amount of money in our people, about $250,000 a year, in something called the Pacific Institute. Lou Tice, God rest his soul. The second thing was we were absolute staunch protectors of our culture. We had a commitment to do the opposite. We were willing to fail. We're willing to try things. We're willing to fail. Another thing is that we did not necessarily have the same management philosophy as most stores did. And part of that was the fact that I was really convinced that nobody was talking about data back then in the 90s or even early 2000s. But I was convinced if you had better data, better insights, better information, your managers, if you believe that they really want to do their best, inherently, they're going to have better information and make better decisions to get a better outcome. And that was a big part of that, Arnold. So, we, at that time, I left in January of 2008, and Frank and I decided to start a company called Reverse Risk that really leveraged all of the data that I had been creating. And then Frank had created a really spectacular monthly financial statement meeting. We kind of joined forces in our approaches. And then Frank had somebody that was working with him at one point, Laura, who was absolutely brilliant, taught herself coding, and was an absolute genius when it came to DMS and data mapping. And basically, that we collectively, invented Reverse Risk. So I did the concept, Frank supplemented it, Laura helped bring it to life. It initially was an absolute crappy program, a crappy looking program, but I took it to the market, and it was still 1,000,000 times better than anything anybody had. Was able to get the first 20 clients on it, and then from there was able to build it up. Now keep in mind, this is January 2008, okay, beginning of the worst recession we've
Right,
ever
right,
had.
right, right.
And so, anyways, we started there in 2010. Cox was interested in buying us. We barely had any customers. We just started 30, maybe 25, 30 customers, but they really loved what we built. And so I met with Chip and Steve Greenfield. That's how I met Steve Greenfield way back in the day, and super smart people. It didn't make sense for us to do a deal, but Steve said, hey, do you happen to know Paul Folletti at NCM, the CEO? And I said, no. So he introduced us. Long story boring, Paul and I met up at a Delta Lounge in Salt Lake City. He loved what we built, and we ended up doing a partnership. So NCM became a partner company of ours in 2012. And from 2012 to 2016, in those 4 years, we went from about 60 clients to over 900 clients. And still today, I'm very proud of the fact that Reverse Risk is still the dominant reporting and analytics platform that's relied upon by thousands of dealers out there, and it's still a spectacular product. So that kind of got me hooked on the power of building solutions to help dealers. And since then, built another one that we sold. I can't say who it was sold to, another strategic, and now have built another 5 since then. So I've learned so much in the process of incubating, concept building, developing, growing, exiting, that I ended up spending about a year with Alan Hay.
There's something about you that I've always, as I've met you and got to know you, you're always looking at what's next.
Yes.
You're always.
I have a company called What's Next.
Do you really? You're okay. So you're always looking at what's next.
It's a core belief.
You're always thinking about what can happen. You're not afraid of it. You take change. You take the bull by the horns. But you also teach it, right? So you do all these things in real life. You have your business. You develop businesses. You worked for a successful dealership. You've sold businesses. You've created more. You got new ones, and you share that information with people too. And you thrive on seeing them succeed.
Yes, it's my favorite thing in the world. I mean, my favorite title of all the things, and I've had, you don't even know the half of it, right? I mean, I have had such a Forrest Gump, Ferris Bueller life. I've been on stage at the Whiskey, playing with some bands that I loved. I've got to do songs with REO Speedwagon and Night Ranger, Foreigner. I've done comedy, including big clubs. I've, gotten to be on TV by happenstance. A dear friend, a good friend, Steve Harwell, God rest his soul, just passed away this week. Lead singer of Smash Mouth. I've been able to be backstage. I was involved with the 49ers. I was on their board for 12 years. I mean, you'd think I would have lived 10 lives, right? I got a call one day from one of the co-founders of eBay. One of his folks, Jeff Skoll, was a co-founder of eBay, and a guy named Kerry Steinbeck called me up one day and said, "Hey, I'm Kerry Steinbeck. I manage the family funds for Jeff Skoll. We have an office here in Silicon Valley. He's considering this project having to do with automotive. We've heard a lot about you. Would you come down? Can we talk to you?" So next thing you know, I'm at this boardroom with these just super high level smart guys, including this guy named Jan, who heads up everything. But I've done businesses. I've done hundreds of millions in business. But I just, what it is? I really believe, Arnold, the number one superpower for a human being is curiosity. And I've got the curiosity of a 4-year-old since I was 4 years old, and it doesn't stop. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to get better, what I could possibly learn to bring more value, and to be a better dad. This is Fatherhood 2.0. I've got a 7 and a 9-year-old Jagger and Jackson. I've got an amazing wife, Hania, who's a badass hospital-based physician. I got a great family, an older daughter, Elise, and Trey. I wanted to be a better 2.0 father than I was a 1.0. And I did some really good things there. But there was things I could absolutely do better. And so I'm constantly, you always hear people say, I want to be the best version of myself. Well, to me, the cool thing about life, you know that you could introduce yourself to the best version of yourself every night of your life, if you choose to. What makes me crazy is people talk about it as if they want to meet this person 5 or 10 or 20 years down the road. Meet them tonight. Why not meet them tonight? Because if you wake up tomorrow, first of all, if you go to bed tonight with a plan for tomorrow, with some really great objectives, some goals, with a regimen, and you go execute and you stay focused and you focus on really bringing value to somebody else and improving their life. One of the things I always say in prayers is, God, please let me leave people better than I found them. Simple. You see a homeless person, say hello. That was somebody's kid at some point. That was a 7-year-old kid that had hopes and dreams. That was somebody's uncle, father, brother, sister. Say hello. If somebody's having a tough day at a restaurant where we are, you could tell they're struggling, they don't have enough staff. Don't beat the shit out of them. Say, listen, you're slammed. We're fine. Catch up. Do your thing. We're good. And then watch their eyes. Watch how the service gets better for every
You change somebody.
You change somebody.
You change somebody.
So, if I just can do that, if any of us can do that, and if I can get a little bit better in the car business, if I can help a dealer figure something out, if I can help them somehow to be hiring people when most people are laying them off, or to increase people's income, I can possibly introduce myself to the best version of myself every night of my life. Has that happened? No. There's times I've met a lesser version of me, but it's okay because, to your point, we're not going to achieve perfect.
We're strive
but I'm going to die trying.
That's right.
That's all I can do.
One of the I think it's a good way as we wrap up is I always ask what's an advice for people starting in this business, but I think you just wrapped it up there. I think your own advice to yourself is the advice for everybody else. And you've proven this to be a successful way of doing business. And in the automotive business or in any business, if people don't know you, they need to get to know you. If they need help, they need to talk to you. You are great at strategy, at finding solutions, but you're also great at motivating and telling people, like you just said right now, look, if you're trying to be the best of yourself, don't wait till tomorrow. Do it today, right?
Yeah.
Do it today. When you get home today, be the best today. If you happen to have a second or third chance, 2.0, 3.0, make 2.0 better than 1.0, right? Make 3.0 better than 2.0. Always try to be better. That's the advice that you can give people. It's a perfect
These
way
people
to.
better than you found them. Do your very best to introduce yourself to the best version of you tomorrow night. Start and end the day with gratitude. Don't expect to do anything you haven't worked for. If you haven't put in the work, don't fool yourself with the expectation. It'll make you crazy. There's so many things. If I look back on my life, it is very uncommon, unperfect, peculiar at times, hard at times life. One of the things I have learned above all, in the best of times, in the worst of times, in the lowest moments, in the best moments, in the worst event you've ever been at or the worst movie you've ever seen, there's lessons that could be learned. There's something you could pull out of there. And what's going to discern whether you pull that out or not is simply you. You're the X factor. And if you approach it the right way, there literally are diamonds everywhere. There's gold everywhere. And at the end of the day, to me, we are the X factor. And at the end of the day, you know, if we are focused on somehow, some way lifting up somebody in our life today,
That's what
you know,
matters.
you've made a huge difference, in my opinion. So,
Fantastic, David. Two things before we go. What's your all-time favorite car?
oh man,
All-time favorite car. This is David's.
you're talking to a
dream
car
car.
junkie, right?
I know.
Well, you know, I was born in 1959, and I feel very blessed to live through the 60s and the 70s. And we had so many incredible cars in the 60s and the 70s. But, you know, that James Bond Aston Martin, the original DB7, the Ferrari California and Ferris Bueller's. But I loved, you know, the 64.5 Mustang convertible, love. The 68 Camaro, loved. The, what was it, 1972 Z28, phenomenal. I had the Thunderbird, the Firebird, the
Yeah,
one with the
yeah.
bird on it,
Yeah.
the black one. You know, then you have, good God, man, there's so many. There's some old school
This is why
Mercedes.
David is an overachiever. I asked him for one car, I got 7.
Well, I know if you said, David, you could only have one, it might surprise people. I mean, I love Ferrari for everything they are, but if I had to choose one car, it actually wouldn't be a Ferrari. It'd be a Porsche. I love the Porsche 911, and there's been many Porsches that I've loved, but it's some iteration of a 911. I just love everything about that car.
It's a beautiful car.
and
Especially
Merce-
some of the older ones, really, that cut was beautiful.
And then the Mercedes, for if it's a sedan, it's got to be an S-Class Mercedes. I've been driving them for over 30 years, and it's still the best sedan on the planet. So I really like those a lot.
It's a great car. All right,
All right.
How about travel? Favorite place to travel? Of all the places you've gone in the world, what is your favorite to date?
Well, I'm a Hawaii fanatic. It just does something to your pulse. It just kind of, your blood pressure goes down, and there's just something beautiful in the simplicity. And if it's not that, it's Europe. And we spent 3 weeks in Europe in the beginning of the summer, and my wife and I just got back from Paris and London. I love architecture and I love history, and I love food. You know what I'm thinking about when I'm having breakfast, Arnold? Lunch. You know what I'm thinking about when I'm having lunch? Dinner.
Yeah. Well, welcome to my world, David.
I love food. I love food. So if I had to choose anywhere to go, if I could only go anywhere in the world right now, it would be a battle, because it would be between Europe and Hawaii.
Well, and both for their reasons, right? Those are very different reasons. I get both. The Hawaii, the scenery, the greenery, the beach, the water, the sand, the tranquil.
Yes.
The Europe is the culture, the history. You know, it gives you two different
Architecture,
It feeds two different
yes,
needs.
it does.
So I agree with you.
And you need kind of both sides of that. What's your favorite car?
Well, look, my favorite car is Lamborghini. You know,
Evo?
no,
Huracan?
the Huracan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The Huracan
Lamborghini
Evo.
Huracan. I think
So you know it's the end of an era
it is. It is.
right now, that the 2023.
I sent you a picture of one the other day.
That's right,
You
it's
know,
beautiful.
you know, that's
I have
the
a
car. I think.
beautiful
And after
Huracan.
that, I would say Ferrari.
I got a beautiful Huracan Evo that you would look spectacular in your driveway. Oh, the Ferrari, the SF90, spectacular. The Monza, I mean, there's not a bad one in the bunch. I mean, I'm not a big the Lusso. I never could get behind. I don't. The wagon.
Yeah,
kind of deal.
No, I can't either.
But
I can't
but
either. It's just not.
in today's California, it's not my car. But I mean, pick one. They're all spectacular.
Yeah, they're all great.
Do you have a favorite song to drive to?
Listen, my favorite song is Chicken Fried by Zach Brown Band. I love that song because to me, everything he talks about in that song is America. If you listen to that song, he talks about food, chicken fried. He talks about the porches, sitting on a porch, relaxing, home, your hometown. He gives honor to the vets, to the veterans, to those who served.
Yep.
He talks about how he loves this country. Everything, when you're driving that classic 60s and 70s car and that music is on and you're driving in America, there can't be anything else better than that.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think
What's your favorite song?
it's like everything else you asked me. I mean, I'm just
Number 7.
well, I mean, I think that there are songs that we all have that when they just happen to come out organically, it literally changes your posture. It puts a smile on your face. It transports you back to a period of time. So I don't know. I think I grew up in a really cool era, right? And I would say like a song that will forever make me happy is "Don't Stop Believing."
Yeah, right,
that was
for
my
sure.
teenage years and young years was growing up and listening to Journey, Boston, Foreigner, all those bands at that time. But I grew up in the 60s just absolutely loving Led Zeppelin. I learned to play guitar when I was 13, so the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Jimi Hendrix.
What do you think is the best band of all time?
Of all time?
I'll tell you a funny story after this. What's the best band of all time?
I think that it wouldn't. Some people might be a hater if I didn't say it was the Beatles. I don't think it was the Beatles. I think the Beatles were magic.
Right.
I just think they were magic in a bottle, and people don't realize how few shows they played and how short of the time they were there. But I think Led Zeppelin has to be considered one of the greatest bands of all time. U2 has to be considered, and
I definitely would put U2 up.
And I'm a big
and how long they've lasted.
Yes, and I'm a huge Dave Matthews fan. He's
Okay.
one of the great songwriter poets.
I'm a big
ever.
concert guy. Believe it or not, that's one of the few people I have not gone
Who?
to see. Dave
The
Matthews.
greatest show you can see.
Yeah. And people talk great about
It's
it.
the
But let me
greatest
tell you the story and we'll end real quick. So Jim Evans, you know who Jim Evans is?
Oh God, yeah.
So Jim
I know Jim
Evans,
Evans.
we were actually in Las Vegas. Jim Evans and I, John Hightower, I think.
Oh,
and
John Hightower, yeah.
Who else? A couple of other people. Anyway, we were talking, and Jim Evans is a crazy Beatles fan. I mean, to him, the best band, the best single, the best trio, it's the Beatles. Whatever category you want to put it, and many people feel that way, right? They think Beatles is the greatest thing ever. Jim Evans he thought the Beatles were the best. So us to mess around with him, we winked at each other without him knowing, and we told him that Kiss was the best. And I thought Jim was going to have a heart attack. Jim was going to have a heart attack all night long, arguing with us about how could we pick
hilarious.
Kiss versus the Beatles.
It's so funny. He also loved, and I'm trying to remember, Jim loved another. It was a guy. Was it John Prine? Maybe it was somebody like that, a way more obscure guitarist. If I'm not mistaken, I think Jim played guitar.
He does. No, he sings and plays.
And I think he's a very good guitar player.
Very.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah,
interesting.
we could be somewhere where there's a piano playing and Jim will kick in. I mean, Jim is a musical guy, so he was really offended when we were comparing
That's
Kiss
hilarious.
to the Beatles. But look, we're old and we can talk all night long. We got to end this thing at some point. Thank you for being on the
What
show.
a pleasure.
David, you are great.
Thank
I
you.
love
You're
I appreciate everything
kind man.
you've
Thank you.
done for me and
Appreciate
for
you.
our company. And here's to many
More to
more
come.
years of friendship and many more years to do together.
I look forward
Cheers,
to it,
buddy.
my friend. Cheers.
Appreciate it.
To your health
Cheers.
and success.
Thank you for listening to Wheels, Deals, and Meals, your main source for all things good and fun, business, food, and cars. If you like this episode, make sure to rate us and subscribe. If you would like to be a guest on our show, please leave a message at the link below. Till next time, happy eating!